In the grand tapestry of history, some threads are woven with such brilliance that they illuminate the entire fabric of a nation. This is the story of one such thread, of a man whose journey from the humblest of beginnings to the highest office in the land would forever redefine the meaning of freedom and unity. This is the story of a backwoods boy who became a giant, a rail splitter who mended a broken nation. This is the story of Abraham Lincoln. Our story begins not in the hallowed halls of power, but in the raw, untamed wilderness of the American frontier. On February 12, 1809, in a one-room log cabin on Sinking Spring Farm in Hardin County, Kentucky, a boy named Abraham was born. The cabin was crude, with a dirt floor and a single window. The world outside was a vast, formidable expanse of dense forests and rugged terrain. This was a world of harsh realities where survival was a daily struggle. And life was dictated by the changing seasons and the unforgiving land. For young Abe, poverty wasn't just a word. It was the air he breathed, the cold that seeped through the cracks in the cabin walls. His parents, Thomas and Nancy Lincoln, were hardworking but uneducated pioneers. They moved frequently from Kentucky to Indiana, always searching for a better life, for a small piece of land to call their own. Abe's childhood was one of relentless labor. From a young age, his hands, which would one day sign the Emancipation Proclamation, were calloused from swinging an axe, clearing land, and splitting rails for fences. He knew the ache of physical exhaustion, the gnawing of hunger, and the profound grief of loss when his mother, Nancy, passed away when he was just 9 years old. It was a devastating blow that cast a long shadow over his youth. Yet, within this world of hardship, a fire was kindled. It wasn't a fire in the hearth, but a fire in the mind. Abraham Lincoln possessed an insatiable hunger for knowledge. While his body was tethered to the manual labor of the farm, his mind soared to distant worlds through the pages of books. Formal schooling was a luxury, sporadic and brief, totaling less than a year in his entire life. But his education was far from limited. Every borrowed book was a treasure, a window to a world beyond the backwoods of Indiana. Imagine a tall, lanky boy, his face illuminated by the flickering glow of the fireplace or a single candle. Long after the rest of his family was asleep, he would read and reread every book he could get his hands on: the family Bible, The Pilgrim's Progress, Robinson Crusoe, and Parson Weems's Life of Washington. He practiced his letters and arithmetic on a wooden shovel with a piece of charcoal, scraping it clean to start again when the surface was full. He was teaching himself piece by piece, building the foundation of a formidable intellect. His neighbors saw him as peculiar, always with a book in his hand, even as he walked to the fields. They might have chuckled at the boy who seemed to prefer reading to wrestling, but they also saw something else: a deep, quiet determination. This relentless pursuit of knowledge was matched by an equally powerful moral compass. Stories of his integrity became local legends. There was the time he worked as a clerk in a general store in New Salem, Illinois. After accidentally shortchanging a customer by a few pennies, he walked several miles that night to return the correct amount. On another occasion, realizing he had given a woman the wrong weight of tea, he closed the shop and delivered the rest of her order. It was these small acts of unwavering honesty that earned him a nickname that would follow him for the rest of his life: Honest Abe. It wasn't a political slogan. It was a testament to his character, forged in the simple, stark morality of the frontier. As he grew into a man, his towering height of 6'4" made him a striking figure. But it was his mind and his character that truly made him stand out. He left the farm and tried his hand at various jobs: a flatboatman navigating the treacherous Mississippi River down to New Orleans, a storekeeper, a postmaster, and a surveyor. Each experience broadened his understanding of people and the burgeoning American nation. In New Salem, a bustling new town, He found a community where his intelligence and wit could truly shine. He was a natural storyteller, captivating listeners with his folksy humor and insightful observations. People were drawn to his genuine nature and his ability to connect with them on a human level. It was here, among the ordinary people of Illinois, that the seeds of his political career were planted, encouraged by friends who saw his potential. Lincoln decided to run for the Illinois state legislature in 1832. His first campaign was unsuccessful, interrupted by a brief stint as a captain in the Black Hawk War. But it didn't deter him. He ran again in 1834, and this time he won. At just 25 years old, Abraham Lincoln, the boy from the log cabin, was now a lawmaker. His entry into politics coincided with another pivotal decision: the pursuit of law. With no formal training, he once again turned to books. He borrowed legal texts, studying them tirelessly, often while lying on his back with his long legs propped up against a tree. He taught himself the principles of justice, of argument, of logic. In 1836, he passed the bar exam and became a lawyer. His legal practice became another extension of his character. He was known as a lawyer for the common person, often representing those who couldn't afford to pay. His arguments rooted in common sense and a profound sense of fairness. His political star continued to rise. He served 4 terms in the Illinois House of Representatives, becoming a prominent figure in the Whig Party. He was a skilled debater and a shrewd political operator, but he never lost the common touch that had defined him. He spoke in a language that people understood, using parables and simple stories to illustrate complex ideas. He was building a reputation not just as an honest man, but as a thoughtful and capable leader. This was the ascent. From the dirt floor of a Kentucky cabin to the polished floors of the State House. From splitting rails to splitting legal hairs. Each step was a testament to his unyielding will and his profound belief in the power of self-improvement. He was a man shaped by the frontier, yet destined for a stage far grander than he could have ever imagined as a boy reading by the firelight. The struggles of his early life had not broken him, they had forged him. They had instilled in him a deep empathy for the common person and an unshakable conviction in the ideals of opportunity and justice. The tall, unassuming lawyer from Springfield, Illinois, was just getting started. The greatest tests of his life and the life of his nation were yet to come. The year is 1861. A storm is gathering over a nation divided. Abraham Lincoln, now president, steps onto a stage far grander and more perilous than any he had ever known. The echoes of his inauguration had barely faded when the first shots were fired at Fort Sumter. The Civil War had begun. The very soul of the United States hung in the balance. Lincoln's primary, all-consuming goal was the preservation of the Union. A house divided against itself cannot stand, he had once declared. Now, that house was crumbling. He faced a monumental task: to lead a fractured nation through its bloodiest conflict, to reunite a family of states torn apart by secession. From the White House, he navigated a political minefield, balancing radical abolitionists, cautious moderates, and a fierce political opposition that questioned his every move. The early years of the war were a brutal education. The Union Army suffered a series of devastating defeats. The Battle of Bull Run, the Peninsula Campaign. Fredericksburg's loss was a heavy blow, not just to the military, but to the morale of the entire North. Lincoln wrestled with his generals, searching for a commander who possessed the will to fight and win, a leader who understood that this was not a gentleman's disagreement, but a war for national survival. He cycled through commanders, each one a disappointment, a source of frustration for a president desperate for a decisive victory. Amidst the cannon fire and the casualty lists, Lincoln's own convictions were hardening. He had always despised slavery, calling it a monstrous injustice. But his initial aim was to save the Union, with or without ending the institution. As the war dragged on, however, and the bodies piled high, he came to see that the two causes, union and emancipation, were inextricably linked. The war was not just about territory or politics, it was a moral crucible. He knew that to truly heal the nation, the disease of slavery had to be eradicated. Following the strategic, though costly, Union victory at the Battle of Antietam, Lincoln saw his moment. He had been waiting for a sign of strength, a battlefield success that would give his next move the weight it deserved. On January 1, 1863, he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This was more than a military strategy. It was a thunderous declaration of human freedom. It declared that all enslaved people in the rebellious states shall be thenceforward and forever free. The proclamation transformed the character of the war. It was now, unequivocally, a fight for liberty. It opened the doors for African American soldiers to join the Union Army, and nearly 200,000 would serve with courage and distinction, fighting for their own liberation and the future of the Republic. But victory was not yet assured. The summer of 1863 brought the war to its bloody zenith at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. For 3 hellish days, the Union and Confederate armies clashed in the largest battle ever fought on American soil. The fields ran red. When the smoke cleared, the Union had held. It was a turning point, a victory that halted the Confederate advance into the North. A few months later, Lincoln traveled to that same battlefield to dedicate a national cemetery. He wasn't the main speaker, and his remarks were expected to be brief. But in just over 2 minutes, he delivered the Gettysburg Address, one of the most powerful and enduring speeches in human history. He spoke of a new birth, of freedom, and resolved that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. He gave meaning to the sacrifice, articulating the profound ideals for which they fought and died. Lincoln finally found the general he had been searching for in Ulysses S. Grant. A tenacious, relentless fighter, Grant understood the brutal calculus of total war. Appointed as General-in-Chief of all Union armies in 1864, Grant launched a coordinated offensive, grinding down the Confederate forces in a war of attrition. The fighting was savage, the losses astronomical. In Washington, Lincoln faced a tough re-election campaign. The war was unpopular, the casualties were staggering, and many clamored for peace at any price. But victories like Sherman's capture of Atlanta helped turn the tide of public opinion. The people re-elected Lincoln, entrusting him to see the war through to its conclusion. In his second inaugural address, delivered just weeks before the war's end, Lincoln offered no triumphant boasts. Instead, he delivered a speech that was more like a sermon, a profound meditation on the tragedy of the war. He spoke of a shared guilt, North and South, for the sin of slavery, and called for reconciliation. With malice toward none, with charity for all, he urged. Let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds. His vision was not of punishment, but of healing. He wanted to rebuild the shattered nation, to welcome the Southern states back into the Union with compassion and forgiveness. On April 9, 1865, General Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. The war, which had cost over 600,000 lives, was finally over. The Union had been preserved. Celebrations erupted across the North. For a few brief days, a sense of profound relief and hope filled the air. Lincoln began to lay the groundwork for Reconstruction, for the monumental task of reuniting the country. But the man who had steered the ship of state through the storm would not live to see the calm. On the evening of April 14, 1865, just 5 days after the surrender, President Lincoln and his wife Mary attended a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. A well-known actor and Confederate sympathizer, John Wilkes Booth, snuck into the presidential box. A single shot rang out. The president slumped forward. The nation's joy turned to horror. Abraham Lincoln died the next morning. The assassination was the final tragic act in a national drama of immense suffering and sacrifice. a country just beginning to heal, was plunged back into grief. But Lincoln's legacy was already secure. He had saved the United States from implosion, led it through its darkest hour, and in so doing, ensured that the promise of freedom would be extended to millions. He remains a towering figure in history, the humble man from the frontier who became the great emancipator, a symbol of moral courage, profound wisdom, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. His life reminds us that even in the deepest of divisions, leadership and a commitment to our highest ideals can bind up a nation's wounds and lead it toward a more perfect union. Thank you so much for joining us for this journey through the life of Abraham Lincoln. If you found this story as moving and important as we do, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into history's most fascinating figures. We'll see you next time.